Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing games. I'm one of your hosts, Ed.
I'm Ebo.
This is Jeff.
I'm Lee.
Excellent. Which one of you, would you say is the host with the most?
I would say by
Body hair.
It's a toss-up between you and Ebo.
Body hair, huh?
Exactly right. By weight, yes.
By weight, definitely you.
Okay, yeah, you got it. I meant by hair weight, but anyway, let's just
Yeah. I have
we're
less.
here to talk about games,
Yeah.
not about grooming / physical deformities. Ebo, did I hear something about some news that you had that I'm tossing to you?
Yeah, Gen Con's coming up. It's August
Excellent.
15th through 18th in bright, sunny, beautiful Indiana, which I have been to before. I haven't been to Gen Con, but I've been to Indiana. It's really nice.
I have yet to have an opportunity to go to Gen Con due to my genetic disability, having children.
Oh, I thought we were back to the fair.
Nope.
I was like, we could do a whole episode about grooming tips. I thought we dumpstered that, but we could resurrect it.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different podcast that I do
Sure.
in the dark with candles.
You're like those animals that have to worry about their young, I guess, instead of just leaving them being there.
Oh, many of them, you mean?
Yeah.
A large number of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Why couldn't we all just be like sea turtles and just
Yeah.
a mess of them just catapult them out into the world?
They do that?
Hey, I think that sea turtles are one of those sad creatures where most of the babies get eaten on the beach before they get into the water.
Little sea turtle post-birth.
Yeah.
Sea turtle, I would prefer that over seahorse.
Well, a sea turtle is useful for something.
Yeah, seahorses aren't even big enough to ride by the smallest of aquatic humanoids.
I don't want people to ride me.
You're not a seahorse. But if
Yeah,
you were a sea turtle, you'd be big enough to ride.
fair enough.
I don't know who saw those things and said, these guys look like horses. All right. The rest of the podcast, though, do you have more news? I thought you had one more nugget.
July 29th for Will Wheaton's birthday was Don't Be a Dick Day. So,
Oh,
If you respect Will Wheaton, don't be a dick.
yeah, that's going to go on forever now. Every July 29th. Or
Echoing
every
throughout
Will Wheaton
history?
birthday, which is the same day.
I don't know. I mean, his birthday might change if,
It was
'cause-
February 29th.
well, if they start honoring him like at the federal level, they'll probably just adjust it to the nearest Monday after
That's true.
actual birthday, and we'll
I,
observe it. You know, we'll get the day off from work, and we'll all try really hard not to be dicks to each other, but most of us still will.
I hope so.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they move the day, then the government would have been being a dick about it,
Well,
which is sort of defeating the purpose.
the magic is
Well,
lost.
It
Don't
is
Be a
really.
Dick Day is the opposite of Thanksgiving Day.
Why is that?
Yeah.
What?
Have you ever been around family on Thanksgiving? Be a dick day is
Everyone
Thanksgiving.
tries to be a dick.
Oh, I usually just like eat and
Yeah.
drink wine and
Fall
fall
asleep.
asleep really early.
but I prefer to just take it the food coma way.
Yeah, nothing like a belly full of turkey and copious alcohol to make you not be a dick to anybody due to comatose.
Unless they
Okay,
expect you to do things.
all right, does that conclude our news segment, Evo?
Yeah, I believe it does.
We are really gangbusters about news on this podcast.
We have had some RPG experiences which fold very elegantly into a subject that we want to talk about on this podcast, which is the super awesome transhuman science fiction RPG Eclipse Phase.
Yes.
It is a weird coincidence that we got experience with that right before we wanted to talk about it.
It is, yeah, I guess I would call that a correlation. I'm not sure it's a cause-effect relationship, but there's
I don't
something
think so.
there's something linked there. Something's
Sure.
happening. But no, seriously though, we did get to play it, and we do want to talk about it now, and we demand that you listen the entire time. It'd be awesome.
I don't
Oh.
demand anything of you. I'm still on Don't Be a Dick Day.
Boy, I don't have anything. But I ended up running Eclipse
Yeah.
Phase a couple weekends ago. It was pretty fun. It was just a one-shot to see how the system worked, how character creation was, if people felt like it was good or bad or somewhere in betweenies. Um,
Yeah, I guess I was surprised to find I had actually made my character for this game a while ago, and at your suggestion, I scrapped it and remade it. Granted, I made the same character, but I didn't remember anything about the choices I had made the first time, so I was like, I want to know what's happening. And I was surprised by how much I was bothered by the Eclipse Phase character creation system.
yeah,
Um, it's not bad. I think I like it. Just a big gunny sack full of points more than I like systems like the old Shadowrun where it was like pick priorities and then you get certain amount of points in each category based on your priorities. I find that very clumsy. But with
yeah,
this, I sort of felt like it was almost the same. It was like we're gonna give you a big pool of points, but there's a couple of things you have to do first for us before you get your gunny sack full of 1,000.
And then you can't use 700 of them
As you
for,
say,
for,
yeah.
for other things.
You have to
There
spend
was a
2/3 of
lot
them
of
this way.
Yeah, I
there
don't
were
understand exactly why they're referring to them as free points when they govern how you spend 700 or 1,000 free points.
Seriously, those should be skill points and 300 free points. Is that too much to ask?
there
Yeah,
were also that is true. Uh, there are also a lot of I guess little things that you want to be wary of when you're creating your character, like uh, attributes can't go over a certain amount at max. They can't go higher than 40 ever. And
I thought they made that a little confusing too, just because it's like your morph, which for those of you who are uninitiated, you can switch bodies in this game. A morph is basically a body. They're supposed to be like semi-permanent, but maybe sometimes you switch on a flight of fancy. But
Or you get murdered.
yeah, basically you're going to want to kind of get into a groove that you're comfortable with, and they have attribute maximums, and for the most part, most of them are like 30-ish or 40 if they're like really good. But I
Yeah.
thought they made it kind of unclear, like what circumstances you were allowed to go higher than 30 in the first place.
yeah,
And yeah, I thought it was a little misleading in places.
there were a couple parts where I don't know if this is exactly how it. I mean, this isn't 100% the correct rules, but you can have your morph that you can only be so skilled at
Hmm.
attribute wise, and once you hit that certain skill point, your morph can't go above that. So a dexterous morph has like I don't know 30 that you can't go above,
Right.
and but you can go above that with external enhancements at
If you
points
buy
too. Yeah,
modifications.
My main peeve with the character creation, and I understand why they made this choice, but I still find it to be a peeve, is that you once you've basically decided what your what do they call them, aptitudes is what they call your core
Hmm.
stats.
yep,
Yeah.
Once you've decided what your aptitude ratings are, then you get to spend your points on individual skills, and they go uh, from 0 to I guess 99. I don't know, whatever. Um, and you can't. You have certain limits, but then they cost a different amount if you're buying a skill that is under 60, and they cost more if you're buying a skill that is over 60. And I found that this is mainly from a power game kind of mindset where I'm just like, I would be really upset if I found out I could have gotten more bang for my buck if I had spent my points more like frugally at the below 60 level instead of just buying skills that were interesting to me. And that was just something I kind of kicked to the curb while I was making this because I was just like, basically, some people are going to have more points than other people, and those people are the people who have more lower skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only had 2 skills that were above 60, and I think I also spent probably maybe more points on skills than anyone else. I'm not sure, but I spent like I think half or over half of my points on like like doing stuff skills like shooting, etc. And I had a huge pile of skills. Like just I was really you know able to do a lot of things aside from swimming, and like yeah, I had all of these skills, and then when like Jeff and Rory were talking about their skill lists, I'm like, wow, you guys have way less than I do.
What
But I mean, they also spent a bunch of points on money and stuff.
one thing that I thought was kind of annoying is that you can spend like some of the same pool of points between your attributes, which are like equivalent to like a D20 ability score, and then some of your points on your skills, which are more specific. But your skills all start at where your attributes were. So depending on how many skills of linked to the same attribute you buy, you might like get more points out of buying attributes or not. It seems like kind of a ripoff, but it's like trying to figure that out to fully get the most bang for your buck seems like something that would enrage me if I thought it was expected of me. Like,
Oh
Sure.
God.
I was just looking, like, when my character was made, I was like, reverse engineering this character would be impossible.
yeah.
The character creation system is like, yeah, it's like kind of a fire and forget thing.
Like when we started playing, Eva was like, yeah, so you kind of double checked your stuff. I'm like, yep. And he's like, so yeah, maybe you did it right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the feeling I had was just like I think I did this all right, but there's no way for me to know. There's no way for anyone else to know. I don't think that there are any big red flags on the character sheet where you could say like, well, there's no way you could have that. I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's just kind of like, um, one other thing that like really stuck right in my craw was that I was playing an infomorph character, meaning that I was a character who was born as data as a program and became sentient. Um, and it's like they have a special property where they spend half as many points on computer skills and twice as many points on social skills. And I did not realize that they're the only person who has anything like they're the only background that has anything like that.
Yeah.
It's like I'm spending one half of a point per point up until 60, and then
Ooh.
1 point over 60. But then on social skills, I'm spending 4 points if I go. I never went over 60 on the social skills, but like I have to spend 2 points to get any kind of social skills, which is kind of a. I thought that was something that other people would have. Like, you have really good spaceship skills, but you're not so good at weapons or something like that. But it was no, it's completely unique.
No, this is
They're
the
only
first time
people
I've
who-
heard of this rule.
Yeah, they're the only people who get this weird bunko rule. But yeah, I mean, I thought that the character creation was. I liked the character once it was made. I just felt like the journey there kind of gave me some
See,
Yeah,
ill
it
feelings.
it was kind of like when I was making my Shadowrun character, talking not the recent one where we played the one shot
Sure.
for RPG Day, but
Uh-huh.
the one that you ran, I had
Sure.
made a character, and doing the gear in it was uh, minimally it, taxing, I would say,
Sure.
for trying to get the most bang for my buck. And I didn't make a character in this, but I can see that having gone the same way, a similar way. Did that actually occur?
my
Or
gear was all. I admittedly I didn't spend a huge amount on gear. Um, I just bought enough stuff that I thought my character might have since we were doing a one shot, so I didn't worry about a lot of the
Sure.
the little tweaky stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't think that the gear was too bad once I figured out about how much one free point or free one character point translates into like money wise. I basically figured out how to do my gear from there. Uh, yeah.
It bears mentioning that this is a system where you can start with what would be considered like world class or end game characters right off the bat. This isn't like a system where you have to level up or anything like that. It's more like kind of like in White Wolf. If you want to start out with maxed out strength, you can. In this game, if you want to start out with a really high skill, you can.
Yeah.
What gives with they have a skill aptitude called somatics, which is strength. They should just call it strength. Um, it's an attribute that you have on your ego, which is your mental character. And I thought that like that was the thing when reading about this game before I put my eyes on any of the printed game material. I thought for sure the whole point was that your physical attributes come with your morph. You buy them, and when you get in that body, I still cannot reconcile why what mind you have inserted into a body has anything to do with that body's strength, but it has everything to do with that body's strength. Generally speaking, a morph will have +0, +5, or +10 somatics, and that is all that has to do with the score on a rank of like 1 to 40. Ugh, that drove me bananas.
I mean, I can see an
Yeah.
argument for it being how good you are at applying the strength that's available to you, but it goes really far for that argument to really hold up.
Yeah, I've been embracing that argument because it's the only way that the game will play, and I'm fine with it. I just it's like, but I want to buy a really really strong morph. Well, you can. It'll be +10. It's like I already have +10. Well, it's as strong as that. As strong as the one you already have. Good
So let me
for you.
read it really quick.
Why?
Soma-
Oh,
Somatics is your skill at pushing your morph to the best of its physical ability, including the fundamental utilization of the morph's strength, endurance, and sustained positioning and motion.
okay. Yeah, exactly what
That
Jeff
works
just
for me.
said.
I can suspend my disbelief
I know.
long enough.
I'm suspending my disbelief for a lot of things in this setting, and I'm comfortable with it. This is my place to air my grievances. This is me coming. I'm
To be
coming for you,
honest,
Eclipse Phase.
My list of grievances in the end ended up being pretty small, but I think I'm relatively easygoing about it. Like the character creation was daunting at first, but now that I've done it once, I think it would be a pretty painless experience for me.
I think that it would be easy and fun to do again. I don't think that it would be brief. It would take me a while to do no matter what.
If you want to play a system where you can't make a bad character, this is a system where you can make a crappy character.
You can, boy.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think you guys were talking about gear before, and I was just going to throw in that I've read a lot of this core book and some of the other materials for it, and I still find myself surprised when like something will come up about just the setting and mainly like the technology. Like I'm saying, like there's just gear in that book that I'm like this is so fundamental to the setting and the system, and I'm never ever going to remember it's in there.
Yeah.
There's some things that are no brainers, but there's some things where it's just like there's going to be a little bit of that bonking of GM versus PCs where it's like, well, it's not my fault you didn't get a Guardian nanobot swarm. He just threw a colony of disassembler nanobots on you, and they're destroying your molecules. You're dead. And it's like, at least in this game, it's like, it's sort of got that kind of Tomb of Horrors vibe where it's like you can't just kill off the party a couple of times in a row until they kind of get their groove, and it'll be okay because they'll come back to life in a new body, and
It's a
everything's
paranoia style vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a little paranoia-esque. It's a little bit less whimsy that you're taking and killing them,
That's true.
unless that's
Also,
your style.
in paranoia, you have limited lives.
In this,
Well, there's ways you can be permanently killed in this
Yep.
game.
So I guess outside of character creation, um,
Oh,
yeah.
just if we're cutting that, um, they are. First of all, they're coming out. Eclipse Phase is coming out with. They did a Kickstarter for Transhuman, which made like 112,000 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number. And they're coming up with. It's an open beta right now. I haven't looked at it
Mhm.
yet because I just
I
noticed it.
leafed
It's an
through the whatever
what is it?
playtest materials that they're. It's like a Eclipse
It's a
Phase player's guide kind of.
player's guide.
Sort of.
Oh,
They're
sure.
doing. I think they got enough money to do a fate version of it,
Oh.
and one of the things is that they have which I haven't checked out, 2 additional ways of doing character creation.
I guess I'm not sure
Nice.
if the
Two
thing I
different
saw.
ways, two
I'm not
alternate ways.
sure if the thing I saw had any of those listed. I was asking somebody on the internet somewhere about like has anybody tried to do away with the way speed works in this game, because it's the classic RPG mechanic that I hate, where you can get a speed rating of +1 to +3, and it just gives you extra actions every turn, and it's like I just don't want that to be in there.
I
And some
thought it
people
was
were
kind of.
saying they have actually in that playtest document have a couple of them of alternate speed systems, which some of which are serviceable and some of which are kind of they make the problem worse.
I dislike the idea of having multiple turns per a different amount of
Yeah,
turns per person. But
That is
it
my
was
biggest
handled
gripe with the system.
it was handled pretty well, I would say. I liked how it was done. I don't know if it was done like well particularly, but I liked how they had set it up because it seemed like a fun and interesting way.
I think that they did it fine, and they did it with the way where you're sort of you you have that kind of social contract where everybody basically agrees that yeah, the baseline +1 speed bonus is something that you can get if you buy it, and that's okay. And the game puts in notable, I'm not sure how mechanically potent the penalties are, but basically any speed bonus beyond that is difficult to get without injury or hindrance.
It's one of
You
those
have to be
systems
taking
where,
drugs, basically.
in order for it to be interesting, some people have to have it, some people don't have it, but it's like the eventuality in a system like that is that everyone has it within like 3 sessions probably, or
Everyone has it,
less.
and then every bad guy has it,
Yeah.
and then the game ends because everybody is mad
So it's like a
all the
zero
time.
sum type thing. It
The,
doesn't really
the,
matter.
for what it's worth, there were a couple of house rules in there, and I think that some of them work to at least curb they curb the power problem. They don't necessarily curb the time problem. They basically make the one that I like the best is just a penalty that applies to subsequent actions that you can. It doesn't explicitly say this, but my message board conversations led me to the conclusion that there are certain other enhancements like multitasking and mental speed that you could use to say reduce those penalties. So it's like you're taking more actions. They're increasingly difficult, and so they're not necessarily as worth it. But then people are still trying them because they have them. They might as well use them, and so it takes as long as it would if everybody was just. It takes longer than it would because they would just be blowing all of the enemies' heads off with those extra actions, and
And now they had to do
just
extra math.
instead they're just failing to hit people in the head. But yeah, I mean that was that like right off the bat, that speed system is one of my oh no nos. Um,
I didn't see an
and
incentive to ever go with speed of 1 is probably the big issue I had with it. There's just
yeah, well,
no reason.
basically speed of one, speed of two, they have increase your speed by one is basically nothing. It costs money, which at character creation is not very important, just because you can kind of get a bunch of money at character creation pretty easy. And the basic message they're sending is speed of 3. If you want to upgrade twice, then you're going to be having weird brain drug problems.
Yeah.
Speed of 4, if you get it, you're basically going to be mixing a cocktail of volatile drugs in your system and dealing with tons and tons of withdrawal symptoms and hangovers and addiction, which mechanically might not be as bad as I think. It's possible that injecting yourself with combat drugs is not so bad, but
I'm
I
pretty sure it's bad.
the implication that they're supposed to give is that it is considered bad by the characters, and it's sort of like I was saying, some of the characters in the session we played had it, some of them didn't, and I felt like, well, I was playing Infomorph, so I basically had better speed than anybody with no arms or legs, so I was just kind of computing at super speed, but it was like
I had speed of 1. It
we can't,
was,
I don't
yeah.
feel like it was that big of a crisis. But yeah, like Jeff was saying earlier, it's not like you're making like weak newbie characters in this system. You're basically firing the best gun in the universe
An
at a
option
bad
to
guy's head
start
twice.
this game with
Twice.
characters that are weak and not just in a like less points, but you can still choose it way, like in an actual like lower level quote unquote characters would seem really cool to me.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. I mean, if you're out on an expedition or you're, part of some, like if you're settling a place or something like that,
Mhm.
you don't have access to big city living
Right.
items.
And especially in the fictional setting where there are a lot of people um, were basically killed during the apocalypse that destroyed the Earth, and their consciousness were downloaded onto computers, and those people are just waiting for an opportunity to get a body. So it's like, from any walk of life, some of those people are going to be elite assassins and super soldiers and computer hackers. Some of those people are just going to be like guys who are in college or people who were just starting out in a criminal gang. And it's like their minds are there. You're downloading them, deciding which ones to put into bodies, and some of those people are going to be just kind of the game gives you the opportunity to kind of play that by having that sort of character archetype receive less money at character creation, but you can also just buy money
Yeah.
for character points. So it's like you can play like a really, really rich refugee.
Yeah.
I played a guy who didn't want to taint his pure body with drugs and only had enough money to buy the things he needed to murder people. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I didn't have any modifications to my body either, so I didn't have any of that shit. So yeah, I was mostly one speed and still had a combat character. And I can tell you that in hindsight, I probably would have bought the Speed 2 modification because having one makes you feel like you wait a long time before you get to take another action.
With just a little bit of a tangent, do any of you think that, with the exception of player characters wanting it and not having their wishes fulfilled, do you think that the game would suffer if the speed mechanics were just taken out completely?
No, I don't know how much it's actually balanced around
Yeah.
the speed mechanic because it's just it's a small monetary value that they've placed on character creation that you don't really lose that much
I
from.
think certain morphs and certain items would have to be balanced to reflect the difference. But I'm just thinking like that was my main gripe. Just like,
Yeah, you would mainly hurt infomorphs.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
you're right.
One thing, Eclipse Phase is not super abstract. I mean, it is in certain areas, but it's a lot more crunchy and a lot more. You're supposed to feel your morph and the sort of transhuman aspects of the game through the system. And the super fast cyborg assassin is like a trope of those that sort of genre that you might miss out on by not having a speed. And I think that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree. That was just a sidebar I was thinking about, just because like that was my first reaction was, I wonder if there's a way you can just take this out.
Yeah.
And then there are some alternate ideas, but it's anyway. Let's not dwell too long on that.
Yeah, it's a very crunchy system. If it seems like we're talking about the system a lot, it's because a lot, like the setting itself is very the system are very like married together in a lot of ways. Like
my most recent gaming experiences before this were Fate game, Amber game. So it's like, I was like, maybe I'm just getting too old and stupid for games that are this granular, but it's just like, yeah, I was surprised, like, just coming off of Fate, I'm just like daunted by how many things are a skill unto themselves, like
like networking.
well, like just the different melee weapons. I was like,
Every,
really? Different melee weapons are different skills again. Wow,
every
this
time
is rustic.
every time I see big skill lists, I get a little terrified now. Actually, just I
See,
mean, playing
Dodging is a
mage.
thing in this.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Um,
I'll be honest. After
Right.
coming off of those games and looking into this thing, I got like pumped up. I was pretty ready to get
You
into
know,
some crunch, like get my hands in it.
my biggest I liked it. I was excited about it, but my biggest problem with it is just you're going over the skill list. You're looking at these things. They made a concerted effort to make some of them sound hip or new or different. Like Frey is like one of those skills you could glance over the skill list and that wouldn't pop out to you as like, oh, that's something I definitely should take. You if you're making an Eclipse Phase character as you listen to this, take Frey. You got to take it. You must.
You probably should have Frey. It's
That's
true.
dodging for melee and for being shot.
One of the things that they say actually in the book is that there's like 3 skills to take, and it's like fray, perception, and then I believe networking.
Yeah, I mean,
At least in something, and it's
the game doesn't
interesting.
do a good enough job. I mean, this game doesn't do a good enough job explaining that that the system demands you take networking for every category in which you have rep.
Yeah.
You basically have this reputation score, which you can use to gain favors from different social groups, and you must have a networking skill to gain them. So this rep is basically just this really flashy reputation that does you no service unless you take the networking skill, which I think is kind of a bummer, but maybe maybe it's good.
It's a little awkward.
Yeah.
I think it's a little cumbersome. It sort of rings of buying something to buy something. However, I think given the fact that your reputation scores can go up and down, basically as like an alternate reward system,
Yeah.
I think that precludes you just lumping the skill and the rep together. But yeah, that was kind of weird. I also think like judging by the depending on the type of game you're going to be in, if you're going to be on Mars the entire time, you don't need it. But I would say free fall is basically the 4th skill in that list of skills. Because if you're going to be doing anything in 0 gravity, that's the skill you use to basically not hurtle off into space. it's like your gravity compensation. It's the thing that you use to when you jump across a 4-kilometer wide chamber in the inside of an asteroid. The thing you use to hit the thing that you're aiming for, and not just the side of a building.
Free fall's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's in a game where you're going to be in space at all, it's basically necessary. Because you don't know when you're going to need to jump off of a spaceship onto another spaceship, and if you don't have free fall, guess what? You're in space and you die. You die the loneliest death.
So, while we've been kind of alluding to it, just a bit about the setting, because I'm sure we'll have lots more crunch talk to get through, but the setting is, like you said, transhuman. The default setting, it seems like you're on Mars, and sort of their default adventure is like you're part of Firewall, which is this sort of decentralized type not corporation, but like a group,
Like a
and there's all these other
conspiratorial
factions.
organization.
I don't think the default setting is on Mars, but it's definitely
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's not necessarily the default setting, but the earliest like source books supported the inner system setting
yeah.
mostly. Is basically like Mars, Venus, Moon, the area around the Earth, a little bit around the Sun if you want to be like a weirdo freak space whale.
Space travel is possible, but it's not like super easy. There's like, I guess what you could consider maybe, I don't want to say realistic, but
Yeah, I was gonna say like this is like it's not hard sci-fi, but they take certain physical things seriously, like
yeah.
travel times and communications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea of the setting is that like traveling from Venus to Mars would take you a very, very long time by spaceship. Probably cost you a lot more money than it's necessarily worth. But if you can go to a facility that can transmit your brain by neutrino waves to Mars from Venus and put it into a new body, well, hey, you just accomplished the fastest space travel you could possibly get.
Yeah.
The only way to get from like Saturn to Mars is by ego casting. I mean, unless you want to be on a boat for months and months and months and months.
which you can do
I no one got time for that.
because time, you can put yourself in a virtual reality. You can simulcast yourself, and you can move at, well, time goes 1/60th as, or 60 times as fast
Yeah,
as normal.
you can use virtual reality to slow down time or speed up time. So if you want to make your weekends seem longer, you can spend more of them in the virtual world playing VR games and you
Crazy
know,
sex games.
yeah, I was gonna say dating sims, wink. Um, but at the same time, if you're on a spaceship for months and months, you can speed up time so that you're basically waking up every 5 minutes to eat a meal so that you don't die, and the rest of the time you're just playing paddleball in a room or something.
The Also, if your group leans this way, or if you think it's as hilarious as we thought it was, uh, the opportunity for sexual deviancy in this setting
Uh,
is almost unbelievable compared to any other setting I've ever been in. It's actually pretty hilarious how blasé they are
yeah,
about weird sex stuff.
you
I thought
gotta
it was hilarious.
assume that yeah, it's in a world where your entire life is saturated with pornography ads that pop up in your field of vision
Yep.
without you asking them to.
Or being able to swap genders. There
You
are
have
morphs that specifically include a gender swap button. You just boop, swap to a different gender. That is like somebody included that, and they were like, somebody's gonna find this hilarious. I'm that guy. I thought
yeah,
it was
it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
I think sexuality is a lot more free in this system, clearly, but I don't think that means that it's
yeah,
that much more devious.
it's not
I mean,
really.
Devious
everything's,
compared to what humans like us as a group, as a people can like relate to, like what we would call regular.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm here to say that it's sort of not important in the setting because it's presumed that anybody can scratch any itch they have at
Yep.
any time. It's the easiest thing in the world. The things that we would find outrageous today are the simplest things to obtain in the distant future, which, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't ever really specifically say what time, what like year or century this takes place.
Yeah, I think they're
Do they?
pretty vague about it.
I thought they were. They sort of just
Everything I heard was like X amount of years after the fall.
yeah,
Yeah, and the
right.
fall was like question marks, time in the
like
future.
Continue.
60 years before the fall, and then like 10 years after
But
the fall
basically,
is when
yeah,
it
the setting
starts,
centers
I think.
around an event known as the Fall, which is where essentially the apocalypse from the Terminator movies happens, and artificial intelligence computers ascend to a super intelligent status by recursively improving their own intelligences
Yes.
and gaining control over manufacturing in order to make killbots and nanoswarms that basically conquered the planet Earth.
Yes.
The
And then they fled.
And
they,
mysteriously left.
They
the human
mysteriously
race was
left.
able to fight them back by them retreating for unexplained reasons. But the idea is that most of the alien stuff in the setting is remnants of hyper advanced super technology created by these AI computers called Titans. So
Yep.
you have these computers which are able to make technology that can do almost anything, including making humans into mutants and making nanobots that can self-replicate and change their machinery at will. And also they are linked to uh, faster than light transportation gates peppered throughout the solar system,
Yes.
which
Pandora
are
gates.
the most, well, I would say the least hard of the science fiction because they break the laws of physics in half instead of just flexing them.
There are a bunch of, there are ancient devices that are being found. There are these Pandora gates that mysteriously opened up, and actual aliens came through.
Yes.
And they want to be your friend, but no one really knows like
the
if they are
factors
or not.
the
Yeah, the
factors
factors.
are the only legit aliens, at least as far as you know from reading the books. They are basically intelligent amoeba-like creatures
Of
that
course
can
they are.
combine into a giant jelly balls inside of their spaceships.
They are
Um,
pretty awesome.
they only communicate by smell and taste, so special computers were built to try to communicate with them. And it seems like they're really nice, but they're sort of bossy jerks from outer space, who are here to tell you that you oughtn't to go through the Pandora gates and you oughtn't to investigate the Titans, and you should just mind your business and stay here and don't worry about anything. And we won't let you meet the other alien races yet because you're not ready, but maybe one day because we're space jerks.
I actually really appreciated that the way they went with the aliens was not a bunch of like humanoids, which I always thought was like an like a trope of old science fiction where everything basically looks like a dude.
Super amigos.
But like they went completely off the wall. Like
Yeah.
whenever I've thought about science fiction stuff, like in a world that I would create, like the aliens never look anything like people because I cannot imagine that 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 an alien race that we would discover would be like, oh no, they just walk on two legs like dudes do. No big deal. Like why don't they have 18 legs and antennas and crap and like or be
Yeah.
amoebas? Like that's awesome.
Out
I
of
like that they
the
went that route.
out of the gate, my area of least interest in this game was the actual extraterrestrial stuff. But I rather like the approach they took to it, which was basically like we're not gonna we're not gonna say that this is like central to the setting. They're not piloting battleships at your forts and trying to take over your loots. They're there. There's some aliens.
They're
Proof
kind of like
that they exist.
bureaucrats that came through
Yeah.
the gates, and they're like, "Hey, let's be friends," but also
Also, there's rules.
The
they don't really they don't enforce anything though. They're just kind of like
and the printed
I don't know.
materials thus far sort of
Shamans.
support the theory that anything is possible with the factors. We might understand their purposes, or it's possible that we've never really gotten the hang of communicating with them using smell computers. Because who knows what the smells that they're experiencing mean to them.
I think the the additional material that they're making being called transhuman is perfect because I do feel like the setting is mostly about, humans
Sure.
or human-like things, I mean, whatever you want to call infomorphs. But like the way these things interact with like new humanity, and new humanity interacts with them is like that seems to be to me to be the central like the thing that drives it, and like so like the factors and these Pandora gates and that sort of stuff. That's like there for people who think that it's cool, but it's mostly about the way that like humanity interacts with those crazy things.
Yeah, for all the crunch in the game, the setting is extremely detailed. It is a huge portion of the core book, and it is just littered with little details that make you think, oh, I would have never thought of that, but that probably would
Yeah.
happen. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And most of the other books that they've come out with for the game line so far are mostly just enhancements to the setting. Like I think there's maybe 5 source books. The first, at least I think it's the first, is Sunward, which is basically about the inner system, and then they have one about gate crashing, like going through Pandora gates to far-flung exoplanets. One that's called Panopticon, which I have no idea what it's about. I think it's just about elements of the setting, technologically speaking, like living in a privacy-free society, basically. Then I don't remember if I'm missing one, but then they had Rimward, which is like the outer system and more detail on it, which I'm super into because I think it's awesome. Um, I've learned a lot also incidentally about astronomy in general from their stubborn refusal in the core book to elaborate on what
Yes.
terms mean.
I had to figure out what.
There's some Googling that goes on.
I
I
didn't
had
know
to
what
figure out
Trojan asteroids
what
were.
chasms are. Yeah.
Sure. I didn't know what Lagrange points. That is
Yep.
An advanced science thing that I spent a long time Wikipedia-ing.
You're like,
Anyway, but yeah, so it's you kind of
There's a
feel
lot
like-
of crunch in the system, but I think
Mhm.
the crunch almost. Sorry, my phone just went off, but I'm using it as a webcam, so I can't do anything about it. the crunch feels like it supports the system and the fluff in a
Yeah.
very like meaningful and what I think is a very well done and interesting way. Like
Games.
a
Yeah.
lot of the time when I think there's when I think there should be something cool that does this, or I think there should be, you know, like I don't know, any of a wide variety of situations where I'm like, well, I wonder if that's covered. And a lot of the time there's like, oh well, there's technology that does that, or something along those lines, and I'm always just impressed at the thought that went into it.
Hmm.
It's built to make the settings seem cool, which is I think kind of harkening back to the speed thing. And if you look at the stats on the weapons, everything is built to function as it should function. It's not built with game balance or other type of like meta concerns
Yeah,
in mind, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Game systems that support what the game is about are like my favorite thing, and I think this is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Um,
it just takes it just takes a bit of investment to get
yeah, I feel
to
like I've
understand the system.
even since we actually played it, I have finally crossed the threshold where I've digested enough of this material that I really like. I want I want to go to there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
When you're
think the
reading
setting
it,
is incredibly cool.
yeah. There's and they threw in so many things that you could do. I mean, there's also psionics, or they're called asyncs in this, but it's essentially psionics that are from the Watts McQuaid virus, and it gave
Yeah,
people superpowers,
And they also talk about how
psi powers.
there's
They're
all
called.
there's I found it interesting. Like I played a Psy user in the beginning of the game, and I don't know, it was fun, but I only used passive stuff. I didn't get into any of like hurting people with my brain or anything. But they in almost every time they talk about the Psy stuff, there's always like these little warnings that like, oh, don't forget. Watson Clyde is a virus, and you can be infected with it, and then you can end up with this. And I'm like, wait, you can just do that to somebody? Like, if your GM is a dick, everybody can be like have like psi powers and crazy derangements and stuff.
That's why
That's
you only
pretty cool.
play on July 29th.
Yeah,
yeah.
protect yourself from your GM.
There's a lot of room for like, playing around with sanity in the game. It's not you could play a game where you seldom brush up against the like really terrifying aspects of the universe, but it's just
Yeah.
like, or you could just basically do it like, Shadowrun plus Call of Cthulhu plus uh, the solar system,
See,
and
I thought that would be really cool. Like the places where you know,
uh-huh.
like I had in my brain like, what if some big giant group of people decided to move next to a Pandora gate? Like I bet those people live bad, crazy lives, and I'm like, that sounds awesome, actually. Like said, like Shadowrun meets Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy, like tentacles
Well,
and alien monsters and stuff coming out
the
everywhere.
I was just reading like I get around to reading an entire game book sometimes, and so I was just starting like from the very beginning and reading the intro fiction for the core book, and it takes place largely on Earth, which is supposed to be like a nightmarish hellscape, and it deals with one of my favorite features of the Titan fighting force, which is like flying robots that buzzsaw your head off and carry it away.
Yes.
Yeah.
They basically have head collectors that steal your head and download your brain into the Titan's mainframe or whatever. So it's just
God,
like really
so
creepy,
awesome.
terrifying stuff.
That's just wow.
Like,
Yeah, they put in a lot of so many different things that you could just run a game with. That's completely different. You can go. Each of the worlds is different, but then there's psionics, there's psi powers, there's the amoebas, the factors,
sure.
Pandora gates, just other worlds in general.
Yeah, I mean, just like
Um,
if you just take going from what it's supposed to be like on Venus versus what it's like on Mars, and then
yeah.
if you cross
Oh,
the belt to go to Jupiter, you're in a completely different setting.
yeah, and the political system where it's like
Right.
there's money on some of the like you can actually buy things with credits on some of the planets, but some of them you buy stuff you pay with reputation, and there's like no money.
Most it
Yeah.
seems like the setting suggests that most of the places in the inner system you can kind of find a niche for both. You can kind of throw your weight around with reputation or pay for things with credits. But once you get past that asteroid belt into the outer system, it's just kind of like there's so many like anarchists out there where it's just like you're just bartering up a storm out in like Neptune space. You're just like, oh, I guess I'll hey, you guys know me. You know I'm good for it. Can I please get new parts for my ship so that I don't hurtle into the planet's surface? Can
One
I
thing
maybe get a new morph because my friend died?
I'd like to bring something up before it gets too late, to make
Okay.
sure that we touch on it, and that's the actual core mechanic of the game.
Yeah.
And the main reason I want to bring it up is because we had different versions of the books, where the core
Yeah.
rolling mechanics are different. So beware of that. Make sure you're all looking at the same thing.
I had the third version.
Third printing, which is
Um,
the updated version. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, and then, but since the game is like free in a PDF, I had gotten it before, but it was the old version, and some of us were still looking at that because it hadn't been updated. So we're reading and we're trying to figure this out, and there's conflicting things because this edition is the third edition, which is the first errata of the book, which makes initiative so much easier, margin of success a lot
Yeah,
more
they really
simplified.
cleaned up the rolling mechanics
At first,
with the
when we
errata.
got the errated version, I thought that it was crazy and that it was stupid and it didn't make sense. I now understand that it functions exactly the same as the original mechanics, only upside down, and I'm fine
Yep.
with it. It just still it feels weird to me.
It feels weird because you are rolling for low and high at the same time. Because you want to get
Yes.
below your score, but as high as you can while still being below your score.
You're rolling for basically a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I think I think the main reason why it feels weird to me is because when you're rolling an opposed roll, um, I feel like most of the skills we were really trying to use as our characters, and most of the skills that our opponents were using to counter them, were very high ratings. So the outcome of an opposed check feels extremely random
It does.
because
Yeah.
you're essentially rolling percentiles to try to get a higher number than another person. The only way that you will push the deal for yourself is if you get over, say, like 75. Let's say you have a pretty good skill for shooting people.
Yeah.
And granted, the bonuses and penalties come usually in increments of 10. So
Like,
it's
with all
basically
of
like,
your bonuses and penalties added up, if both people are 99 or above, it's a completely random check. That is where the game caps out. You're just rolling to see who can get higher at that point. No,
right.
nothing else.
I think maybe rolling doubles to get a critical might give you some extra juice too. But that's
Also so random.
statistically unlikely usually.
Yeah. Which is weird because there are huge modifiers that you can get. Like, you can get things that give you plus 20, plus 30, and it is odd for a game that seems to, during character creation, prioritize like specialization and skill really high, and then when you actually get into play, if someone gets a plus 30, it is very random.
Yeah, I think so too. That was the main thing I was uncomfortable with the system. Like, I think this game has finally kind of gotten me over my allergy to percentile dice based systems and rolling under based systems. Um, but like, I'm still kind of put off by that weird thing where you're rolling a percentile dice against someone else's percentiles
Yeah.
to try to
Well,
beat them.
the margin of success I think is done better now because you're not subtracting
Sure.
from your total number. Before, if you rolled a 65, I believe to get a margin of success of 30, you'd have to roll a 35
Right.
because
Oh God,
30
yes.
down from 65.
Right.
And
Well,
how it is now is you just take your number
Yeah. And
that
that's
you
basically
rolled.
the difference was that the way they worked opposed rolls before was the same as they work all rolls now. They're just saying that since your margin of success is the it's going to be the exact same chance of rolling a margin of success of say 30 as it was before. It's just going to be a different number showing to get that.
And I think that's the advantage. It's the percentile system. You don't have to do a lot of arbitrary subtraction after you're done with it. You just, well, it's under, so that's the number I got. But the downside of that is that you are limited to up to 100 because what you roll on the die is the best you can get.
I also kind of took umbrage with the way like I think I might have lost it now. The thing that I take umbrage with, just one of the.
Oh, can't have been that bad.
Yeah, like I said, umbrage. I'm not saying I take exception.
Whoa, now.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't worry about it. Well, I think I was going to say something about how the system sort of feels like, since the bonuses and penalties you get are almost always in increments of 10, like from circumstances at least. It sort of gives you that sense that individual points don't really matter very much, and I think that they only matter insofar as you're looking at a D100 instead of a D10, and so it's not only important when you crawl over that 10 mark, but
Right.
it's basically giving you the sensation that you're rolling a D10 with a +1 to +3 instead of rolling D100 with +10 to +30. But it all comes out in the wash. I think that's the upside.
Yeah.
That's true. And the way we were playing it with a website, doing our dice rolling for us, we were using House Roll for it. We, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have to worry about a lot of the rolling the extra dice math, and that was all right.
I kind of disliked the way that, like, I could look at everybody's rolls and see them pop up in the chat window while we were playing, but I sort of disliked the way where the roll would show up, and then it would be incumbent upon the player to just decide whether or not they succeeded. Because it's like, I mean, I'm not saying that keeping DCs close to my chest is my big pleasure as a GM. I'm just saying, like, it's one of those things where, I would almost invariably say, okay, I got a 35. I made it. Like, I would forget, that I have to be.
So did you make it?
The player needs to know what the penalties are at very least, so they can say, I got under the thing, and it's 20. What does that give me? And it is kind of awkward to talk about.
Yeah. I think that in a world where we're playing around a table instead of on the internet, and we're seeing the dice rolls. The GM looks at those dice. I guess I don't know why it would be different. Because the player would still have to say.
I don't think it's an online thing. I think it's just a little awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to having our, I think as a group, what do you call it, like Fate and D20 systems and everything. It's like the difficulty of a check is set by the GM, and then they give you modifiers also. Whereas in this, the difficulty of a check is set by your character, and then the GM gives you modifiers. I actually think that,
and I think,
like, for my money, I think that's a little bit better for the GM.
At least, I think that this system has going for it the fact that whether the modifiers are applied before or after the dice are technically rolled, it does not change the outcome. That was one of my biggest beefs with the New World of Darkness system, was that the GM has to give you all of those modifiers beforehand, and if they don't give them to you beforehand, you have to start from scratch, because you can't take those results and do anything with them. They mean nothing now.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest downside I saw while actually playing the system is the disparity between static and opposed rolls. I decided to go all out and make a character who had like one thing really high. It was impossible for me to fail a static roll, because the most penalty you can get made it almost nearly impossible to fail. And then when it came to opposed rolls, if the person had a decent skill, it would basically be completely random.
You can get a -60 modifier, I believe, for your
I see what you're saying.
difficulty and test difficulty.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
I'm interested in I don't know, fiddling with it more and reading more about it at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah, as much as I say our talk has tilted distinctly negative, I did enjoy the system. I mean, I enjoyed
It was
playing
a lot of fun.
I enjoyed the granularity of it, and I mean, I've been playing Path of Exile lately, and as Jeff and Evo can probably attest, that game has a what I would call daunting skill list. And I don't know, for some reason, like those sorts of things appeal to me in a completely different and still interesting way than compared to games like Fate, where you don't really have a lot of stuff going on under the hood, so to speak.
Or Amber.
Or Amber, yeah, where there's literally nothing going on under the hood in a meaningful way, except on Rory's hood. And
Where
then
it's
like
just a random number anyway.
yeah, and but
They don't know. I'm just rolling d8s.
the crunch in the
I
system.
finally get to use my D8s.
Just rolling this giant box of D12s that I have.
That's Jeff rolling a giant box of
That's an actual
D12s.
person.
Just turns it upside down.
On this podcast, who has a giant box of D12s, or maybe they're gone. I don't remember. Whatever.
No, they're still here.
Okay.
He can't get rid of them. He has to keep them until the day he dies. They've got to be passed down to his children.
They're gonna be thrown in your grave.
But once you get past the learning curve and once you get used to the quirks, I feel like the system more or less. I feel like it gets the job done. Like there's a lot of stuff for the system to cover, and it does that pretty admirably to me anyway. There's a lot of little quirks that sort of get in your craw, to use Ed's word, but I think that with either with one experienced person to help the group out, or with a group of people who are willing to crowdsource their character creation, you can work through that pretty easily.
Yeah, I'd say the flaws we found were like concerns, things that we might be interested in, what you could work around, but it wasn't like laughing off the game or anything. It was a lot of fun. It's really good.
Yeah. And also the amount that they encourage the GM to just do things. Like I was surprised at the amount of times where they were just like, or you just do whatever you want. They just encouraged you as the GM to be like, meh, or whatever. And I was like, wow, really? Like with all that crunch, and you're like, hand wavy. They still get hand wavy, which pleases me. It's not like Burning Wheel where you will never see anything hand wavy in that system because there's a rule for waving your hand and a skill for it.
Yes. And you don't have it.
No, you don't have that skill. You have spitting for some reason, distance spitting.
No, your Alf went into the
Oh, you
ether
remember
even
that.
before the game started.
I did remember it, just for you, Ed.
You don't have that
Distance
skill
spitting.
because you're a dwarf.
To be fair, I think that was a trait and not a skill. I think bullseye spitting was a pirate skill or pirate trait. They always spit perfectly accurately. Because why not?
But it's a pretty big skill list, but
It's a pretty big skill list. There are a lot of traits as well. I mean, that was one thing
that is true.
character creation, that it was like, you look at those sample characters in the book, they're not like stacked with traits. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I look at that menu of traits and I'm like, oh, I should take all of these. These are great. But then I'm just like, oh.
Oh
That-
yeah, this is a thing. I think the negative traits in this game are hilarious, and additionally, I think that they play like the ones that are in the book play into the role playing in a really interesting way. Like I had one for real world naivete where Evo could have just told me something that was a flat out lie about a social situation, and I would have had to take it at face value because my character's a noob, and
Yeah.
like that's so cool to me. Like it would have just rolled, and I would have been like, okay, I guess I don't know how to talk to princes. Why do they even have those? But they give you like a limit, like, oh, you can have 30 points of negative traits and 30 points of positive traits, and I would recommend considering 30 points of negative traits. They're hilarious and interesting. I think you can actually flesh out the character in really creative ways with the negative traits.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the negative traits were more interesting than flaws and that sort of thing tend to be in a lot of systems.
Yeah.
I did, however, take exception to they have like one that's like blacklisted and then one that's like black mark, and they seem to do virtually the same thing, except that one of them is worth a lot more points than the other one,
Yeah.
and it seems to be the least bad of the two, in my opinion. But
Yeah, I noticed a bunch of
Yeah.
people were blacklisted, and I'm like, I
well,
didn't have
was-
enough room in my negative traits to take something else that's awesome, but
blacklisted is one of those ones where gets you a lot more points if it's the group that you started out in, because you're basically saying like, oh, they no longer like me anymore in Jupiter. But
I am banned from this region of space.
I just was blacklisted from something unrelated for reasons. But it's like, then the other one is just like, the one is you can't get rep in a certain category. And then the other one is you get penalties to your networking skill checks for a specific category. And it's like, you get so many points for that penalty to networking checks, whereas if you just never take any rep and never make any networking checks, those points are free points. I'm just saying, like, what's the difference between? I took the one that made the most sense for my character, even though it was the least amount of points, because I didn't want to ask this question and have to talk about it.
And now we did.
You don't want to have to
and
be
all
that
your
guy.
planning is ruined.
I think I might be missing a piece there. Like, maybe there is a big difference,
You
but
probably are missing.
I think it's possible that I'm just missing a piece of just about every conversation and piece of text.
A lot of hidden Easter eggs in the book.
Yeah, I guess I'm
not
looking forward to that player's guide they're talking about.
Mhm.
I saw a little bit of teaser stuff that somebody put up when I was asking this question about speed, and it took me a really long time to get to the speed stuff, because well before that there's a whole bunch of new backgrounds, and especially morphs.
Ooh.
A lot of new backgrounds, especially different types of backgrounds for uplifts,
Ooh.
which is a thing in this.
Oh, is there a cat one?
I don't remember. I know that there's a whale.
Nice.
Maybe that's from something else. There's a lot of
course.
different a lot of different types of uplifts, which for the uninitiated are
Looks like we're gonna have
animals
a real
who
over
have
time.
through super science been given human level intelligence, and in the future they are like they think they're people.
In Jeff's character's case, it was stupid human level intelligence.
Hey now.
There's a bunch more of those, and not just a bunch more animals, but also a bunch more like kind of concepts for like how you got there. Like I don't remember exactly how they work. Like I can't remember what I'm talking about.
That is actually something I'd be interested in, because like
Yeah.
I just kind of hand waved this because I didn't think Evo cared and he seemed cool with it, but like uplifts are supposed to be like second or third generation, and I was like, I would like to have been born an animal. Is that okay? And okay.
Sure.
You're also not supposed to be cats.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
they
didn't
have
care.
a mess load of different ones, including like
It didn't seem like it made a difference to me whether you were a cat and you were on a different generation, and you could have been bat grown. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or something.
they also have like alternate origins for info life characters, such as emergent AI life, where you are an AI designed for like menial purpose and you gain sentience through
Oh no.
some other means.
Oh, so no one likes you? Okay.
So wait, you can make a Roomba character?
The standard model has you being,
He's coming to get you.
the standard model has info life characters being artificial intelligence that was created for the purpose of seeming humanish and having sympathy for the human race, whereas these are people who were born vacuum cleaner AIs and
DJ
have
Roomba's in the building.
don't necessarily have any explicit sympathy for human life. Yeah, they're pretty cool little
I want to see these books.
Yeah.
blips
I only
and
played
blimps.
one session.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
play more. I've, as I told Evo when we first did this and made characters, before we went back and made characters, when I read The Lost, I was like, oh my god, I could make 100 of these.
The Lost are a really cool character.
And when I looked at a lot of the other backgrounds, I'm like, oh my god, I could make 100 of those too. And that's when I realized that it was a very deep rabbit hole for me, like character creation wise.
I really like it, but I'm not sold on. I just ran a game where it's kind of like a Ghost in the Shell type of game, and it was just one session, and we were just on Mars. But I'm not sold on just staying on Mars. I think I kind of want to at least branch out to some of the other things. And there's like so many things that you can do that it's just overwhelming. But it's like I don't know.
Yeah. It's a very deep setting, which I think the setting is incredibly interesting. And if if you're not sure, whether you'll like the system or not, I would encourage you, if you're considering it, to read into the setting first, and then consider the way the systematic stuff plays into that, because I think that's where the system gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably it for us.
I feel like I've exhausted all of my wise
Yeah.
quips
Yeah.
We didn't even get
with the one.
to the actual game, but
The game was good. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, so you probably know this since you're listening to it, but we are at houserule.com. You can tweet with us at houserule.
We're on Twitter now.
Yeah, like us at Facebook. And yeah, send us an email, houserulepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
All right.
All right.
Goodbye, people.
Later.
See you later.
Bye bye.